Imagine a world where humanity's darkest instincts take control, where an entire nation is plunged into terror by its own leaders. This is the chilling reality of Khmer Rouge, where ordinary citizens face unimaginable horrors. A regime so brutal, its name still sends shivers down the spines of those who lived through it. Today, we uncover the brutal legacy of one of history's most ruthless regimes. Stories of brutality, hardships, and the haunting lessons that still echo today. It's 1975 Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Dr. Chen, a respected and highly educated physician, is about to sit down for dinner with his family when a sudden frantic knock on the door shatters the evening calm. It's the Khmer Rouge, and they've come to forcefully send the entire family to the countryside to work in the rice fields, in a twisted version of Cambodia's own Great Leap Forward. In just a few hours, Dr. Chen's world is turned upside down. He goes from a life of prestige to grueling labor in the rice fields, stripped of his identity and dignity. But this isn't just Dr. Chen's story. It's the story of an entire nation, men, women, and children, all swept into the nightmare of the Khmer Rouge. A nightmare that would see up to 2 million people perish, with many ending in the infamous killing fields. In the early 1970s, Cambodia was a country in turmoil. The Vietnam War had spilled over into its borders, leading to widespread devastation. By 1975, the country was exhausted by years of civil war, bombing campaigns, and instability. The Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, capitalized on this chaos. They promised peace, stability, and a return to Cambodia's agrarian roots. Disillusioned by the corruption and ineffectiveness of the earlier governments, many Cambodians initially supported the Khmer Rouge, or rather viewed them as a lesser evil. But they would find out very soon about the dark and evil reality of Khmer Rouge. On April 17, 1975, the Khmer Rouge entered Phnom Penh. What followed was not the peace and stability the people hoped for, but a brutal ideological experiment that would transform the country into a living nightmare. Pol Pot, the leader of the Khmer Rouge, wanted to establish an agrarian utopia, a pure society, free of class differences, where the peasants were the soul of the nation. The Khmer Rouge's goal was simple: erase everything that symbolized modernity. Schools, cities, currency, and even family units were torn apart. By forcing people to work in labor camps, they planned to purify Cambodia. But what came next was nothing short of terrifying. As the Khmer Rouge took control, they immediately ordered the evacuation of all cities, including Phnom Penh. Approximately 2 million people, about 75% of Phnom Penh's population, were forced to leave their homes and march into the countryside. The Khmer Rouge claimed that this was necessary to protect the people from impending American bombing. But in reality, it was the beginning of their radical plan to transform Cambodia into a self-sufficient agrarian society. Families were torn apart and forced out of the city, belongings abandoned, and lives turned upside down in a matter of hours. The sick and elderly were left to die on the roadsides, unable to keep up with the grueling march. The Khmer Rouge showed no mercy, executing anyone who resisted or questioned their authority. The streets of Phnom Penh, once bustling with life, became ghostly echoes of their former selves. Millions of people were forced out of the cities and into harsh, rural countryside to work the fields. And that's where the real horrors began. Once the population was dispersed into the countryside, the Khmer Rouge set about creating their vision of a utopian society, which they called Democratic Kampuchea. In this new society, money, religion, and private property were abolished. The Khmer Rouge sought to eliminate all social distinctions, forcibly turning the entire population into peasants who worked in collective farms. Dr. Chen, once a respected doctor, found himself working as a laborer in the rice fields. Life in the labor camps was brutal, and food was one of the first casualties of the regime's extremist policies. The Khmer Rouge imposed severe food rations on the workers, leaving most on the brink of starvation. People were given just a handful of rice a day, often mixed with water and little else, forcing them to endure back-breaking labor with barely any nourishment. The hunger was so severe that some resorted to eating insects or grass just to stay alive. Intellectuals, professionals, and anyone associated with the previous regime were considered enemies of the state. The Khmer Rouge believed that anyone with an education was a threat to their ideology, leading to the persecution and execution of countless doctors, teachers, engineers, and even those who simply wore glasses. The Khmer Rouge also unleashed a wave of ethnic cleansing, using their secret police to round up ethnic minorities such as Vietnamese, Chinese, and Cham Muslims. These groups were viewed as threats to the regime's vision of a pure agrarian society. Under the Khmer Rouge, all private ownership was abolished. Even cooking privately was banned. People were forced to eat in communal mess halls, with no freedom over their meals. To further their quest for total control, the Khmer Rouge forced absolute uniformity among all citizens. Everyone was required to wear the same simple black clothes, and haircuts were standardized, a radical attempt to erase personal identity and make everyone indistinguishable from one another. By stripping away individuality, the regime sought to create a faceless, obedient society, crushing any dissent before it could take root. For those who were labeled as enemies of the regime, interrogation and torture were almost inevitable. In places like the infamous S-21 prison, prisoners endured unimaginable suffering. Electric shocks were used to force confessions, even when there was nothing to confess. Prisoners were often poisoned, and in some of the most harrowing cases, they were forced to dig their own graves before being executed. Of the approximately 17,000 people sent to this prison, only 7 are known to have survived. Perhaps the most spine-chilling aspect of the Khmer Rouge era was the so-called killing fields. In the Cambodian countryside, isolated from the world, fields turned into mass graves. It was here that the regime committed unspeakable atrocities. Ordinary Cambodians, men, women, and children were systematically murdered by the thousands. Some estimates put the death toll at nearly 2 million. But the truth? We may never know the full extent of the horror. The brutality of the regime was unimaginable. But fortunately enough, it was all about to come to an end. In early 1979, the nightmare finally began to end. The Vietnamese invaded Cambodia, toppling the Khmer Rouge regime. Pol Pot and his comrades fled into the jungles, where they would continue to wage a guerrilla war for years. But even after the Khmer Rouge was gone, the scars they left behind were deep. Cambodia was a shattered nation, its people broken in both body and spirit, with an entire generation lost. Today, Cambodia is slowly healing, but the memories of the Khmer Rouge still linger. The killing fields, now a haunting memorial, remind the world of the horrors that can unfold when power is left unchecked. As we look back on this dark chapter in history, it's a stark reminder of the fragility of peace. So the next time you hear someone speak of Cambodia, remember that beneath its beauty lies a history so chilling that it still sends shivers down the spines of those who lived through it, as well as those who learn about it. For more on history's untold stories and the hidden chapters of our past, make sure to subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching.